Soha Tayata Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha Tayata Mune Mune Maha Mune Soha.
Actually, for this red chair, I don't need this thing. It was really for those kinds of chairs. So. Okay, so let's do the prayers and then do a little meditation on something from our previous talk.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies, form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With a supreme sign's face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path of freedom too, well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame on a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Okay, so take a few minutes to make sure that you're settled down in the present moment. Remember the bodhicitta motivation you generated earlier. Refresh that and have that as your motivation for being here, as attending this class. So let's do a short meditation on excitement or restlessness, which is one of the obstacles or hindrances to cultivating shamatha, calm abiding, serenity. So this is when our mind gets distracted away from our meditation object to an object of desire or attachment. So it's related to desire, attachment. And there are two levels of this problem. One is called coarse excitement, and that's when our mind completely goes off the object that we're meditating on and gets caught up in the object of attachment. And so we lose our object of meditation. We lose our mindfulness. We forget our meditation object. So the first thing we need to do is be able to notice it when it happens. So see if you can recall an experience of this in one of your recent meditation sessions. and see if you can recall if you noticed it right away or only after a few seconds or minutes. And now, think about the results of letting your mind stray from your meditation object to something you have desire for. What are some short-term results, long-term results? And on the other hand, what are the results of counteracting this tendency and returning your mind to your meditation object and doing your best to keep it there? So based on what you've understood in this short meditation, see if you can make a renewed determination to train your mind to stay on your chosen meditation object and bring it back whenever it wanders away. Okay, so This is our first class for a couple of weeks over the holiday season. And there was a question in the last class about a term on the top of page 299 of the book. It's talking about how to practice mindfulness. And there's a term, certainty. Starting on the bottom of page 298, it says, "Yet mindfulness apprehends its objects with an aspect of certainty." And also in the next paragraph below that, right at the end, it says, "Therefore, someone who meditates in this manner applies a mindfulness powerful enough to produce an ascertaining consciousness." So it's the same term in Tibetan for both certainty and ascertaining. So Geshe Zopa in his commentary had a nice explanation of this. This is volume 4, page 87. He says, "Mindfulness is definite and sure. It apprehends its object with certainty. Some systems argue that your mind should be relaxed and not hold the object too tightly. They encourage people to stay loose and relaxed, and they do not encourage real power with regard to the way you focus on the object of meditation. If you follow that type of instruction, it may seem like you have perfect concentration because there is initially mental clarity and focus. But when your focus is too relaxed, there will always be a subtle laxity. Your mind will have no strength, and subtle mental sinking will slowly increase, leading to dullness, cloudiness, and darkness. Your mind will be drawn in that way. Without this active power, your concentration will always be faulty. You can meditate for years and years with subtle laxity, and true shamatha will not arise." So certainty here means, he used words like strength and power. And then this expression, ascertaining consciousness. So in Lorig, the subject about mind and awarenesses, that term ascertain is used sometimes as a verb. You know, when it talks about the mind ascertaining its object. And it also has the sense of definiteness and certainty. So one explanation says that an ascertaining consciousness is able to induce a remembrance or a recollection of that appearance. So an ascertainment is more than an object merely appearing to the mind. The object has been registered on the consciousness. So you might remember this type of awareness that's called, sometimes it's called inattentive perception. It's like, you know, your mind kind of knows there's an object, but not in a very strong way. So then you're not able to fully remember it afterwards. Because they say, like if you're watching TV or you're watching a movie, you're really engrossed in one thing, and somebody might say something to you, and there is hearing. Hearing takes place. You know that somebody said something, but you don't fully grasp what was said, and so you can't remember it afterwards. So that's when we don't ascertain. Okay, that's a lack of ascertainment. So they say that ascertainment is when our mind like kind of fully understands and grasps what we perceive, and then later we're able to remember it. So we do want to have that kind of mind when we're practicing meditation and cultivating shamatha. Okay, so then we got up to the bottom of page 301, this new section called Determining the Length of Session. So how long should we meditate for? And yeah, before I get into that, I'll just read from Geshe Zopa. It's kind of cute what he says in here. Oops, where did it go? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so he says, how long should a session be when we do this kind of meditation practice? When you are sick, you may be prescribed medication that should be taken multiple times in small doses. In the same way, you should apply antidotes in regular small doses in order to free yourself from mental diseases. With regard to training in shamatha, these doses are meditation sessions. There are a number of possible ways to approach mastering mindfulness meditation, with a long retreat, a short retreat, multiple sessions per day, and so forth. Generally, all the Tibetan traditions recommend multiple short sessions per day, albeit for different reasons. If you stop while your meditation session is going well, you will be enthusiastic about pursuing additional practice sessions. As a beginner, if you push yourself to meditate until you are exhausted, you may look back on that session with less enthusiasm and not want to practice more. Tibetans often say that meditation is sort of like having a friend or relative visit. If they do not stay too long and leave on a happy note, you will feel strong friendship for them when they depart. You will look forward to seeing them again. But if they overstay their welcome or leave after you have had an argument, you may not want to invite them back again anytime soon. The same is true at the beginning of shamatha training. It is good to end your meditation sessions while you are enjoying it and feel that you could continue much longer. This way you will be more eager for the next session. Okay, so what Lama Tsongkhapa says. Someone might ask, now, is there an established length of meditation sessions specified in terms of tie the mind to the object and place it for just this long? Major texts such as Shravaka levels do not seem to clearly uphold an established length. However, the third stages of meditation says, doing these practices in this order, sit for 24 minutes, an hour and a half, 3 hours, or as long as you can. This appears to have been set forth in the context of establishing the length of meditation sessions for cultivating special insight after shamatha has already been accomplished, but it is evidently similar in the context of initially practicing shamatha. So the text, this is one of Kamala Shila's text, it actually says 1/60th of a day, which turns out to be 24 minutes. So they didn't have clocks, right? In that time, they didn't have clocks and watches, so they would measure time by daytime, the sun rising, sun setting, where the sun is in the sky, and so on. So, yeah, approximately 24 minutes. But that's just an estimate. That's just a suggested length. If you recollect the object and observe your practice periodically, the method for maintaining mindfulness and vigilance explained above is indeed faultless, even for long sessions. So if you're able to keep your mind on your object and have mindfulness and vigilance, then you can meditate for long sessions. However, for most beginners, forgetfulness arises if the sessions are too long. They become distracted and mentally wander off. And although laxity and excitement occur in the process, they do not identify them quickly, but recognize them only after much time has elapsed. Okay, so for beginners, then our mind will fall into forgetfulness, we'll forget our object, we'll have laxity and excitement, and we won't recognize those for a long time. So that's one problem that can happen. Alternatively, even if they do not lose their mindfulness, meaning, they still remember their object, the mind is still on the object, they easily fall under the power of laxity and excitement and do not identify them quickly. So your mind might be stuck in either laxity or excitement, but you fail to recognize it because they're not always easy to recognize, well, especially laxity. It is difficult to cut through laxity and excitement because the former of these two impedes the arising of strong mindfulness, whereas the latter impedes the arising of strong vigilance. So that sentence was a little unclear, but looking at Geshe Sopa's commentary and looking at the translation of the Lamrim Chenmo, it seems that these two doesn't refer to laxity and excitement, but it refers to the two things that can happen when you're meditating. The first one is you forget your object completely and your mind wanders off and you're caught up in laxity and excitement and you don't even realize it. So that's one problem. And the second problem is you don't lose your mindfulness, but you can still fall under the power of laxity and excitement. So those are the two problems he's referring to here. And so it says the former of these two, your mind just completely wandering off, that impedes the arising of strong mindfulness. And then the latter, you still remember your object, but you can still fall under the sway of laxity and excitement. So that problem impedes the arising of strong vigilance. Does that make sense? Yeah, the way it's translated here, it's a little unclear. Anyway, both problems. The first problem happens more often when you're a beginner. Your mind just completely wanders away from your object and you go to Tahiti and you go, remember movies that you saw and all kinds of things. You don't even realize your mind has wandered off. And then the second problem can still occur after some practice of meditation, and you are able to keep your mind on your meditation object, but there can still be they say it's like water flowing under the ice in a river. The surface can be frozen, but underneath there's water flowing. So your mind may be stable on your object, but there's these other problems happening and you may not recognize them. So that impedes strong vigilance. Specifically, it is a lot worse to forget the meditation object, become distracted, and then fail to notice laxity and excitement than it is to not identify laxity and excitement quickly, but still remember the meditation object. So that first of the two problems is worse than the second one. Therefore, the method of maintaining mindfulness explained above is very important as the antidote that counters distraction and the deterioration of mindfulness. And so explained above means back on page 297, kind of in the middle of the page, he starts talking about what is mindfulness and how to cultivate it. So that's really important to know. Short sessions are needed in the event of great forgetfulness or the mind getting distracted and wandering off a lot, when the vigilance that quickly identifies laxity and excitement is weak. So vigilance, he's using the term vigilance here for what is also called introspective awareness, introspective alertness. So that's the mental factor that's able to identify what faults there are in our mind so that we can take care of them. So short sessions. So some teachers say, 5 minutes when you're beginning, like if you want to go into if you're doing a retreat to cultivate shamatha, you can start with 5-minute sessions. Because if you can keep your mind on your object for 5 minutes, that's doing well. And then as your mind gets better at staying on the object, you can lengthen the sessions and then even get to the point where you can sit there for hours. So develop gradually. On the other hand, if forgetfulness rarely arises, and it seems that laxity and excitement are being recognized quickly, there's nothing wrong with slightly longer sessions either. It is with an awareness of this that the duration is not specified as 24 minutes and so on. In brief, it says, as long as you can, because the length must accord with one's mental ability. So there's no fixed amount of time for your sessions. It really depends on how your meditation is going. Apart from that, you should rest in meditative equipoise unless you suffer some temporary physical or mental harm. So, yeah, didn't find much explanation of that. Geshe-Zopa says things like sickness, so if you get sick, but mental harm, yeah, I'm not really sure what that means, but it could mean, yeah, if your mind maybe gets really afflicted, really caught up in attachment or in anger or fear or something, and you're just not able to continue your practice, then he says, if that happens, do not continue meditating, but rather eliminate the obstacles to your physical and mental constitution first, and then meditate. Yeah, so if there's some big problem that happens on the physical level or mental level, or someone's trying to break into your house, or I don't know, whatever, some kind of big problem, it's okay to stop, take care of that, and then return to your practice. That is the opinion of experts. So you should know that doing that factors into the length of sessions. So that's also something to consider. You shouldn't say, oh, I decided to meditate for 24 minutes and this person is breaking into my house, so I have to sit here until the bell rings and then I can get up and take care of that. So be flexible. Okay, so then, did you get the slides? Okay, so then we have a whole bunch more outlines. Okay, so this is letter C that was first introduced back on page 290. I mean, this book doesn't have, letters and numbers, but that was the letter I used. Letter C on page 290 is the third point under the way to generate flawless concentration. So the outline was, what to do before focusing the mind, what to do while focusing the mind, what to do after focusing the mind. So that's where we are now, what to do after focusing the mind on the object. So this has 2 points: what to do when excitement or laxity occur, and what to do while free from laxity and excitement. First, what to do when excitement or laxity occur. This has 2 points: applying the antidote for failure to notice laxity and excitement. And the second is applying the antidote for not trying to eliminate them, even though they have been noticed. So it's actually a problem if there is either laxity or excitement happening in the mind and you don't notice it. So that's like a hindrance itself, a failure to notice it. Then there's also the problem that even if you notice one of those happening, but you don't do anything about it, you just let it continue. That's another problem. So first, applying the antidote for failure to notice laxity and excitement. This has 2 points: defining laxity and excitement, and the method for generating vigilance that recognizes laxity and excitement during meditation. So defining laxity and excitement. So we have to be clear what they are. And he starts with excitement, which is, we could go to the next slide because there's a number of different terms used here, and some of these are mental factors. They're included among the 51 mental factors. So here he gives an explanation from the Compendium of Abhidharma. That's a Sangha's text. Excitement is just as stated in the Compendium of Abhidharma. What is excitement? It is a very unpeaceful mind, a form of attachment that pursues pleasant signs. It has the function of disrupting shamatha. So it's actually one of the 20 secondary afflictions. So it's an affliction, and it's related to attachment. Yeah, so Venerable uses the term restlessness. Other books say agitation. So what's on this slide, this is from Volume 3, Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature, where it talks about all the different kinds of afflictions and gives definitions for them. So So here this definition is: a mental factor that through the force of attachment does not allow the mind to rest solely on a virtuous object, but scatters it here and there to many other objects. That's not as clear as here. It's specifically to objects of attachment. So things that we have attachment for, things we find attractive, pleasant. And it could be, the way I think of it is, it could be past experiences, like when we remember good times, movies, places we went, and so on. So, memories of those past good times can arise in the mind, and our mind gets distracted by them. Could also be present objects. If we hear some sound, somebody's playing music, and it's the kind of music we like, then our mind will be distracted to that. Or if we smell odors from the kitchen, somebody's making granola, it really smells yummy, or whatever. So it could be a present object that our senses are picking up. It could also be future. We don't really know what's going to happen in the future, but still our mind can fantasize. If there's something we're going to do in the future and we're looking forward to that and excited about that, our mind might start fantasizing about that. So it seems to me it could happen, the object could be either past or present or future, but it's something we find attractive or pleasant. So here it says it has 3 features. Well, it says right here, its object is something attractive and pleasant. Its aspect is the mind being unpeaceful and scattered outward. And because it is a form of attachment, it engages its object through craving. So there's craving, grasping. Its function is to disrupt the mind placed on its object. So does that sound familiar? It's probably, I don't know. Our mind can be distracted by a number of different things, but in my experience, it seems to be most of the time when the mind gets distracted, it's this kind. It's distracted to something attractive. And it says, while tied to an inner object, the mind is drawn without control through the excitement of attachment to forms such as sounds and becomes distracted. It is just as stated in Praise of Confession. I don't know what text that is. Praise of Confession. Praise of Confession. Chandra Goman. Right when you are focused on shamatha, directing your mind at an object again and again, your attention is drawn away by the noose of the mental afflictions without control, by the rope of attachment to objects. So that's an explanation of this particular mental factor, excitement. I was wondering, in the list of the 5 hindrances to concentration, the first of those is sense desire. And they seem very similar. I mean, there are 2 different lists, but yeah, desire, sense desire, seems to be the same as this. I don't know. Has a different name, a different term. It's on a different list, but they seem to be talking about the same thing. And then, a little bit later, it talks about distraction. But so I thought to put it up here. Distraction is another of the secondary afflictions, and it's said to be derived from all 3 poisons, not only attachment, but anger, attachment, and ignorance. And that is a mental factor that, arising from any of the 3 poisons, is unable to direct the mind toward a constructive object and disperses it to a variety of other objects. So for example, if you think about an argument you had with somebody, or somebody did something you're annoyed about, and you're feeling annoyed, angry. So if that comes up in your mind and takes your mind away from your object of meditation, that would be distraction, but not excitement. So excitement is only when the mind is distracted to an object of attachment. And I don't know, I didn't think of an example of distraction related to ignorance. Someone think of an example when your mind might be distracted from your object of meditation due to ignorance.
Maybe if there's confusion, you're doubtful about what you should be doing or focused on.
Yeah, could be. But it's also said that when we're meditating, our mind can also be distracted by a virtuous object. Like if you're trying to meditate on one object, but then some other object comes up, which is a virtuous object, thinking of your spiritual teacher, for example, or thinking you're trying to visualize white Tara, and then green Tara comes up, or Manjushri comes up, or something else. So it's not an object of attachment or an object of aversion or ignorance. It's virtuous, something virtuous. but still that becomes a distraction. And it's an obstacle to calm abiding, to shamatha. So you are supposed to, leave that object and go back to your original one. Otherwise your mind doesn't learn how to stay focused. So distraction, that particular mental factor, could be to a variety of different objects. And I also put up here the definition of lethargy, which is going to come a little later. So lethargy is also a secondary mental affliction. It's also sometimes translated as dullness, another translation. And it's similar to laxity. So Lama Tsongkhapa is going into an explanation of the difference between laxity and lethargy. But lethargy is derived from ignorance, and that's a mental factor that, having caused the mind to become dull and thereby insensitive, does not comprehend its object clearly. So it's kind of more gross, more coarse than laxity. We'll look at laxity next, but this seems to be, heavier. Mind is kind of heavy, insensitive, doesn't see its object clearly. And it is a secondary mental factor, a secondary affliction. So all of these three are on the list of the 20 secondary afflictions, whereas laxity is not. Laxity is not on the list of the 51 mental factors. And Lama Tsongkhapa says in here, it's actually not very clear in the text what is laxity. So he's trying to define it. So anyway, we'll go on. So he says, in many translations, laxity is also rendered as sinking. Some people claim that laxity is when the mind does not scatter to other objects, but is lethargic and lacks clarity and limpidity. However, that is incorrect because the second stages of meditation and the Unraveling the Intent Sutra say that laxity arises from lethargy. Okay, so I guess some people confuse laxity and lethargy, but he's pointing out texts from Kamala Shila and the Sutra that say laxity arises from lethargy, so that means they are different. In the Compendium of Abhidharma, laxity is indeed explained in the context of the secondary affliction of distraction. So, I looked up in a text on the mental factors, and when it explains the second of these, distraction, and it gives different examples of it, there it does mention laxity. So in that context, in that text, laxity is a type of distraction, because when there's really strong laxity, the mind actually loses the object. The mind gets distracted from the object in a sort of dullness. And you can probably, it's hard to recognize. So when we feel sleepy, dull, fall into a stupor, that's probably lethargy. But laxity is more subtle than that. But he spends quite a bit of time here explaining what it is so that we can recognize it when it's happening. And then he says, however, when there is distraction as explained there, virtue may also arise, so it is not necessarily afflicted. So he's saying that, distraction can be to a virtuous object, so it isn't necessarily afflicted. So you're trying to visualize white Tara and your mind thinks about Manjushri, so that's not afflicted, that's virtuous, but it's still a distraction. It's still an obstacle to cultivating calm abiding. Does that make sense? It's kind of a little tricky here, all these different kind of problems that can arise when we're meditating. And then he says, consequently, in the compendium of Abhidharma and in the treasury of Abhidharma auto commentary. So the first of those is from a Sangha. The second is from Vasubandhu, his brother. So in those texts, lethargy is said to be a heaviness, an unserviceability of the body and the mind that forms part of ignorance. So that's the third one here. With laxity, the way the mind holds its object is slack, and the object is not held clearly or tightly. So it's a lack of clarity, a lack of tightness with the way the mind holds the object. Therefore, even if limpidity is present, when the way the object is held lacks clarity, there's laxity. So there might be, the object might appear clearly, but there's this slackness and a lack of real clarity or vividness. So that's laxity. The second stages of meditation says, you should know that at times when the mind does not see the object clearly, like someone blind, or someone entering darkness, or someone closing his eyes, there is laxity. I have not seen a clear definition of laxity in the other great texts. So, the great treatises from the Nalanda tradition talk about laxity, but don't seem to really define it or clearly explain it. Also, here it says laxity is either virtuous or neutral. So laxity isn't afflicted. It's not an affliction. It could be virtuous, it could be neutral. I guess because it can be there. You can be focusing on your object, and your object might be the Buddha, might be, something really virtuous. So you're staying on your object, and you probably have a virtuous motivation, so your mind is virtuous. But there's this lack of clarity and this slackness there. And so So if your mind, the main mind is virtuous, the mental factors together with that would also be virtuous. I guess I'm just talking out loud, but this is thinking out loud. I guess that's why it could be virtuous. Or it could be neutral. Maybe if your mind isn't non-virtuous, if it's neutral, your object is neutral, then laxity would also be neutral. So laxity is either virtuous or neutral, whereas lethargy is only a non-virtuous or neutral obstruction and part of ignorance. So there's a footnote saying Geshe Tupten Zopa. This is not Geshe Sopa. Geshe Tupten Zopa used to live in Germany. He explains that a neutral obstruction is not non-virtuous, but it is nevertheless a mental affliction. So this is complicated. Afflictions, something can be an affliction, but not necessarily non-virtuous. Not all afflictions are non-virtuous. So there's a kind of, I don't know what to say there. Some are non-virtuous, like anger. Anger is always non-virtuous. It's both an affliction and non-virtuous. But there are other afflictions. They can be afflictions, but they are not non-virtuous. So one example is, as I've learned, attachment to the bliss of concentration. It's attachment, so it's an affliction. But it isn't non-virtuous because, if you have mental concentration, shamatha, and higher levels of concentration like the jhanas, you can have attachment, but those states of mind themselves are virtuous because they lead to happiness and higher rebirths and so on. So not all, and of course ignorance isn't, it's an affliction, but it isn't necessarily non-virtuous, because under the influence of ignorance we do virtue, we create virtue, the cause of good rebirths. So they aren't equivalent. The point is, afflictions and non-virtuous states of mind are not equivalent. It's kind of complicated. But anyway, so a neutral obstruction is not non-virtuous, but it is nevertheless a mental affliction. So here, laxity would be, I guess it's an affliction. It's not really clear if it is an affliction or not. It's not on the list of the main or the root or secondary afflictions, but it's an obstruction. So laxity is either virtuous or neutral, whereas lethargy is only non-virtuous or neutral. So lethargy could be neutral or non-virtuous. On part of ignorance. It's complicated. But anyway, if we want to, the bottom line is, if we want to cultivate shamatha, calm abiding, we do have to look out for these mental states because they are obstructions. And the next slide does have some information about laxity. Even though there isn't a definition, most texts say that it is a lack of clarity or vividness. So that's what it is in general. And in Alan Wallace's book, The Attention Revolution, which is about cultivating shamatha, he mentions 3 types. Other books only mention 2, but I don't know what his source is, but he mentions 3 types of laxity. So coarse laxity is when our attention mostly disengages from the object due to insufficient vividness. So he uses the word vividness instead of clarity. So it's a lack of vividness. So due to a lack of vividness, our attention actually disengages from the object. And then there's medium laxity. The object appears, but not with much vividness. So there's a lack of vividness to the appearance of the object. And then subtle laxity, that's the really bad one. The object appears vividly, but the attention is slightly slack. So that's the one they say you can be meditating for years and even think that you have achieved calm abiding, but you haven't, because there's this slackness, lack of tightness in the way that your mind is holding the object. So then he goes on to talk about what to do about laxity. The great texts say that in order to eliminate laxity, you should uplift the mind by meditating on a joyful object, such as a Buddha image or light. You thereby prevent lack of clarity in the object, which is like darkness having fallen on the mind, and prevent decline in the way the mind holds it. Then you need to both clarify the object and tighten how you hold it. So if your mind comes under the influence of laxity, you can temporarily suspend your attention on your usual meditation object and think about something that will uplift the mind. Well, here it says a Buddha image. If your object is already the Buddha image, then maybe you could just think about the qualities of the Buddha, like try to make your mind more enthusiastic, more devoted, more joyful about focusing on the Buddha. Think of Buddha's qualities and generate aspiration to emulate those qualities, something that will uplift the mind. It also mentions light, visualizing light. That is said to help overcome laxity. And other things they say, other things that could uplift your mind, like precious human rebirth. So the mind needs to be charged, like your batteries are running low. So you need to charge your batteries and uplift the mind. And then once you've done that, then you can go back to your object and try to make it more clear and tighten how you hold it. Excitement is easy to recognize, but laxity is difficult to understand because it is not clearly identified in the great texts. Yet such an understanding is essential because this is a major ground for mistaking one's concentration to be faultless. So if you don't recognize laxity, it might be there in your mind, and so your meditation is faulty rather than faultless. Therefore, you should investigate and identify it well with mental subtlety based on your experience and in accordance with the statements in stages of meditation. So anyway, we need to, read the texts, like this text, and I don't know if some of these texts are translated into English stages. Well, there's the second stages of meditation. I don't know about the other two. Compendium of Abhidharma, I think that's translated as well. But then mainly we have to look at our own experience and use our own experience to recognize. But I think that in the beginning, when we're first trying to just keep our mind on the object, the main problem is excitement. Well, other distractions as well, and lethargy, like especially after lunch. And it seems to me that once your mind has become more stable, you're able to keep your mind on the object with some continuity, then you can start looking for laxity. Then it's easier to recognize that. Any questions so far? I'm not sure I can answer them, but yes.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what my question is, but when I'm thinking about this process for eliminating laxity, where you put your focus on a object that brightens your mind, it just seems like there's a real possibility of getting distracted by what you've brightened your mind with, because that's a joyful image and you can get very attracted to that. And so then you're going from laxity to possibly distraction or excitement.
Well, I mean, I really like that analogy of tuning the strings of a guitar. If you think of the mind being like, a string of a guitar, and you just have to keep tuning the mind, fine-tune the mind. And sometimes you'll go too far one way, and then you go too far another way. But eventually those, I don't know the word, those changes will get smaller and smaller, and eventually you'll find just the right tightness or the right state of mind that you're trying to develop. So, I think sometimes our mind does go to extremes, but then we learn from that, and then learn to not go that way again, not to go that far again, and try to stay in the middle way. Like often talked about in Buddhism, the middle way, finding the middle way of tuning your mind.
Venerable, is it possible that you've chosen the wrong object if you continually go to laxity on the same one? It's like, okay, I've gone this way and I'm going to go back to my object, and then you start getting lax again. Like, is there any point where you should reevaluate what object you're deciding to focus on?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I guess it could be possible that if you keep running into major hurdles with an object that you have chosen, that it might be good to, I mean, that happened to me when I tried to do the shamatha retreat. I had trouble with the object that I was using, really big problems. But I thought, I'll just keep going for a month and see how it goes. And after a month, I still had these big problems. And then I wrote to my teacher and asked advice, and he told me I could use another object. So if you have access to a teacher, then that is good. I don't know what the great masters of the past did, whether they had to try different objects until they found one that worked for them. But that is a possibility, yeah.
Venerable, how true is it that because of a lack of merits that we keep bumping into laxity?
That we keep what?
Keep having problems with laxity.
Is it a lack of merit? Well, Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't mention that. He doesn't say, oh, if you have laxity, you should go and, make offerings, make mandala offerings. I mean, generally, we do need merit, and we also need purification to progress in our practice. But that doesn't seem to be mentioned. Although, I mean, often I'm just trying to remember when they give advice on doing retreat, they give you advice on what to do during your sessions, and then they also say in between sessions, you can study, you can do practices for accumulation of merit and purification. So, yeah, I mean, it's always a good idea to do that. We definitely do need merit and purification to make progress on the path. But that isn't mentioned specifically as an antidote to laxity. Seems like, yeah, we just need strong mindfulness and strong vigilance, introspective alertness to be able to recognize it and then deal with it. So the next, so this section we just did was basically how to notice laxity and excitement, how to be able to notice them. We have to know what their characteristics are. The next section is the method for generating vigilance that recognizes laxity and excitement during meditation. Oh, sorry, I think there's another one. Yeah, so later it talks about how to actually stop them. So we need vigilance or introspective alertness to be able to recognize them when they happen. So he says, it is not enough to merely have an understanding of laxity and excitement. Rather, you need to be able to generate vigilance that knows precisely whether laxity or excitement have arisen during your meditation. In fact, in your cultivation of powerful vigilance, you not only need the vigilance that identifies laxity and excitement as soon as they arise, you also need the vigilance that knows them when they are just about to arise, but have not actually arisen. So we have to see them coming, like a scout, looking out on the horizon. You don't want to wait until the enemy is right at your door. You want to see them coming. Maybe you see some smoke arising, dust from the horses or something. So you have to have really good eyesight to recognize them when they're coming. As it says in the second and third stages of meditation, if you notice laxity in the mind or suspect it might arise, and noticing excitement in the mind or suspecting it might arise, until you generate this kind of vigilance, you cannot identify laxity or excitement if they arise. You might assert that from this point to that point there was flawless meditation without laxity or excitement, but that would be unsubstantiated, because without that powerful vigilance you could not be certain. In accordance with that, distinguishing the middle from the extremes, one of Maitreya's texts, when it says, once laxity and excitement are realized, this teaches that you need vigilance to notice laxity and excitement. Therefore, if the vigilance that cannot fail to know laxity and excitement has not arisen, you could meditate for a long time and even spend years with subtle laxity and excitement without noticing that they are occurring. Well then, how do you generate vigilance? One very essential cause is the method for maintaining mindfulness presented above. So that was, again, back on page 297. Basically, he says there that you focus your mind on your object and then generate a forceful apprehension of the object with your consciousness. Having placed the mind firmly, keep it there without newly analyzing anything. And there's more, but that's how to start. If you can generate continuous mindfulness in that manner, you will be able to stop forgetting the object and mentally wandering off. You will thereby reverse long-term insensitivity to the arising of laxity and excitement and come to recognize laxity and excitement easily. So we probably have long-term insensitivity, right? Our mind has probably had lots of experience of laxity and excitement, and this is like very habitual, and we don't notice. Yeah, we fail to notice them. So probably most people in the world, most ordinary beings, yeah, have a lot of this and don't even know it. This is very clear when, from the perspective of your own experience, you compare the amount of time it takes you to know laxity and excitement when mindfulness has deteriorated with the amount of time it takes you when it has not. In other words, when our mindfulness is good, when we have good mindfulness, in other words, we're able to remember the object of meditation without forgetting it. That's the meaning of mindfulness here. Being able to keep the object of meditation as our focus and not forget it, not lose it. So when there's mindfulness, then then it's much easier to recognize laxity and excitement. With this understanding, our friend Shantideva says in Entering the Bodhisattva Way, when mindfulness is there to stay at the gate of the mind to guard it, at that point vigilance will come. Explanation of distinguishing the middle from the extremes also explains mindfulness as the cause of vigilance. So I found that really helpful when I was working on this practice. They talked about how important it was to have vigilance, introspective awareness, but how? How do we have it? And this was the key. If we have mindfulness, if we have strong mindfulness, then vigilance will arise. It's the result of mindfulness. One such cause is to focus the mind on the apprehended object, such as an image of the deity's body and the like, or on the apprehending subject, such as the experience of mere awareness or mere clarity. So whatever your object of meditation is, whether it's something like the Buddha or a deity's body, or in some cases people use the mind itself, mere awareness or mere clarity. So just the nature of the mind itself is an object that some people use for cultivating shamatha. So he's saying, focus your mind on that object. Then apply mindfulness as explained above. Focus the mind and continuously observe whether it is scattering. So, just be alert. Is my mind on my meditation object, or has it gone elsewhere? This should be understood as the essential point for maintaining vigilance. So that's how to cultivate vigilance, introspective awareness. In accordance with that, entering the Bodhisattva way also says, investigating again and again the state of body and mind, in brief, just that alone is the definition of the guarding of vigilance. Actually, in in volume 4, you haven't come to that part yet, but when it gets to the, I forget which chapter it is, but the 4 foundations of mindfulness, in that beginning part of that section, there's several pages of explanation about introspective awareness from different texts, different points of view. So that would be helpful to have a better understanding of that mental factor. By doing this, you therefore generate vigilance that is aware of any laxity and excitement when they are about to arise. By means of applying mindfulness, on the other hand, the forgetfulness of your mind being distracted and wandering off is stopped so that you observe well. You need to distinguish between them. I think them means mindfulness and vigilance. So we need to understand what the faults, the obstacles are. What is excitement? What is laxity? What are the other faults? We need to know those so we can recognize them when they occur. And then we also need to understand what is mindfulness and what is vigilance so that we can cultivate those and make sure they are present in our mind so that we can recognize those faults when they arise. Okay, then applying the antidote for not trying to eliminate laxity and excitement, even though they have been noticed. So this is a problem. Even if you recognize, you know what laxity and excitement are, you recognize them, but then you don't do anything about them. You just let your mind wander or sink into laxity. Okay, so though properly applying the method for maintaining mindfulness and vigilance as explained above, through properly applying the method for maintaining mindfulness and vigilance as explained above, strong mindfulness will arise, then even subtle laxity and excitement can be recognized by means of that vigilance. And the fault of not noticing laxity and excitement will not be there. So it didn't explain the different, I think it'll probably come later, but excitement also has 2 levels. There's gross and subtle, coarse and subtle. So coarse is when your mind goes off the object altogether, totally distracted to some object of attachment. You forget your object. And then subtle excitement is you don't lose your object. You still have mindfulness of your object, but at the same time, there's this other stuff going on. Thinking about an old movie or thinking about some fantasy. So that's subtle excitement. However, when you fail to cultivate the effort to stop the two as soon as they arise, that complacent lack of effort or non-application is a big problem for concentration. So I think that is the fourth of the 5 faults, non-application, when there's a fault but you're not applying the antidote. That is why you should cultivate the intention referred to as application or effort as its antidote. So it's, there's several words here. Intention, he's going to explain what intention is in the next section. This is the omnipresent mental factor of intention, sampa. And it's a specific kind of intention here, and it's also referred to as application and effort. This is the antidote to not applying antidotes to the affliction, to the faults when they arise. So this has 2 points: identifying intention and the way it stops laxity and excitement, and identifying the causes that give rise to laxity and excitement. Go a little bit more. Okay, the Compendium of Abhidharma asks, what is intention? So again, this is the omnipresent or ever-present mental factor, and it's also karma. So they say that's what karma is. It is the mind creating karmic formations, the activity of the mind that causes the mind to get involved in virtue, non-virtue, or something neutral. That means intention is the mental factor that moves the mind and impels it to something virtuous, non-virtuous, or neutral, like iron moving without control under the power of a magnet. So if you have a big, strong magnet and you have little bits of iron, they're going to go stick to the magnet. Here, you should understand it as the intention that motivates the mind to eliminate either laxity or excitement when they occur. So it's a specific kind of intention. It's the intention that wants to stop these faults of laxity or excitement. Now, how do you stop laxity and excitement? A mind that is lax has withdrawn inward too much and lost its apprehension of the object. That's like gross or coarse laxity. For that reason, the first stages of meditation says that you should attend to a cause for the mind to move outward again, an uplifting phenomenon. Specifically, it should be something like the Buddha's body rather than something arousing that gives rise to mental afflictions. Okay, so we don't want to uplift our mind by thinking about something that we have attachment to. Okay, that mind will be uplifted, but that's excitement. So we don't want to go there. So something virtuous, like the Buddha's body, precious human rebirth, light, and so on. Alternatively, if you clear away the laxity by focusing on a sign of light, such as sunshine, that should immediately tighten the way you apprehend the object and maintain it. So my understanding is it doesn't mean you have to go outside and look at the sunshine, but you can just think of light, you can visualize light. Sometimes just imagine your whole body being filled with light. So that's supposed to help as well. In this situation, do not meditate on a disenchanting object, because disenchantment is a cause for the mind to withdraw inward. So a disenchanting object would be like death, suffering of samsara. So those are the things we should meditate on to counteract excitement, to kind of bring our mind down. But the mind is already kind of down when you have laxity, so you don't want to make it go further down under the ground. So something uplifting. However, if you analyze any object you wish to analyze with fine investigative wisdom and feel enthusiasm, this will reverse laxity. The Compendium of the Perfections says, when there is sinking, uplift the mind through the power of effort in special insight. So I have to admit, I haven't actually read this part yet and prepared for it, but it kind of sounds like, yeah, you can actually use any object if you use fine investigative wisdom, if it generates enthusiasm. So maybe thinking about impermanence or thinking about emptiness, if you have good wisdom, that will also uplift your mind. Now, this laxity or sinking is lax because the apprehension of the object has diminished, and it is sinking because it has withdrawn inward too much. Your mind is kind of sunk inside too much. Therefore, it is counteracted by the enthusiasm upon uplifting the mind of apprehension and expanding the object. Essence of the Middle Way says, when it sinks, expand the mind through meditation on spacious objects. And when it sinks, uplift it by seeing the benefits of joyous effort. So maybe I'll stop there. That's a good point to stop. So we're kind of in the middle of this section on how to deal with laxity. Because I seem to recall they also say that if you try to deal with it while you're sitting there on your meditation seat, using some uplifting topic like thinking of the Buddha or precious human rebirth or light. But if that fails, then you can take a break and go outside and look out. If you have a good view, like here, you can just look out into space. You can also splash your face with cold water. Get some fresh air. So things like that can help. And then you can go back to your seat and try again. Okay, any questions? Just a few minutes left. Probably went through most of this already with Venerable Children in Volume 4. Yeah.
It's good to hear again. Yeah,
Sorry?
it's very good to hear again.
Yeah, we have to hear it again and again. Venerable Palma.
I'm a bit puzzled about having the mind still on the object, but also being involved in something else.
That's easy.
I mean, it's easy.
Haven't you ever done that?
It's easy to do, actually. Yeah. But I wonder how it works. I mean, would that mean that the mind switches very fast?
I think so, yeah. I think it's probably, because our mind can really switch very fast. So we haven't totally forgotten, totally wandered off the object, but there's something else going on, and so it's kind of switching back and forth. Because even mindfulness, I went to a course taught by Geshe Kelsang Wamo, teaching the 4 establishments of mindfulness. And she said, if I can remember correctly, because it's actually not possible. So if we use the explanation of mindfulness as being aware of what's happening in the present, that's another meaning of mindfulness, just awareness of what is happening in the present. It's actually not possible to do that. We can't actually have mindfulness of, say, an object that's happening in our mind at the same time that it's happening. So when we have mindfulness, it's actually, we're mindful of what happened in the immediately previous moment, the moment just before. And then the next moment we can have mindfulness of it. So it's, strictly speaking, according to the way the mind is explained in our tradition anyway, that's how it works. So we're actually noticing what happened in the previous moment. But the mind, it changes so fast that we don't notice how quickly it changes. So it can seem as if it's simultaneous. It can seem as if we are simultaneously aware, we have simultaneous mindfulness of something that's happening at that moment. But it's probably just more like remembering, because that is the meaning of mindfulness. It's the same word as remembering, memory. So we're actually remembering what happened one instant before. So I think it's kind of similar with when our mind is caught up in subtle excitement. So yeah, we are aware of our object, but kind of switches back and forth between that movie we saw or that fantasy or whatever.
Would that also explain then the moments when there is some kind of sadness or anxiety deep down inside, but really there's also a feeling of cheerfulness?
Probably, yeah. I mean, you'd have to try to pay attention to your mind and see what's going on. But yeah, I think if we really pay attention to our mind, we can start to see that, yeah, it is changing all the time. Because that reminds me, one time when I was teaching about working with the mind, working with the emotions, and this man asked, what would you say to someone who's been depressed for 50 years? And I said, really? Every single minute, every single second, you've had depression, nothing else but depression? And he just kind of smiled. He smiled. So I think if we really pay attention, it can seem as if there's nothing but depression continuously every minute. But if you really pay attention, no, there are breaks. We get breaks from that. So, yeah. Impermanence, that's just to see the impermanence of the mind, the impermanence of our experiences. They come and they go, they change all the time. And that really helps. I find that incredibly helpful, just to see that even a state of depression or sadness or grief isn't something permanent, always there every second with no break at all. And then it seems that's really depressing. If you're already depressed and then you get depressed about being depressed. But if you can see, well, there's actually breaks in there. It's not so permanent as it seems. Makes it a bit lighter. Okay, so we'll stop there.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and the spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niriyatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no